Volume, intensity, frequency. So there's a few definitions that we need to run through. The first one being volume, which refers to the total amount of work performed during a workout or over a given period, typically measured by the number of sets and repetitions completed. Now, it reflects the cumulative workload placed on muscles and is a key factor in muscle growth and endurance development. We then have intensity, which represents the level of effort or resistance applied during a workout. And it's often expressed as a percentage of an individual's 1 rep max. Higher intensity workouts generally involve heavier weights or greater resistance. And finally, we have frequency. That relates to the number of training sessions per week or per muscle group. It determines how often specific muscles are targeted for growth and recovery, balancing between sufficient stimulation and adequate rest for optimal progress and injury prevention. Together, volume, intensity, and frequency are fundamental aspects of designing effective training programs tailored towards your individual fitness goals. So let's take a look at volume for muscle growth. Now, volume can actually be measured in different ways to track the amount of work that you're doing. One common method is using volume load, which is calculated by multiplying the weight that you lift by the number of reps and sets you do. For example, if you are lifting 100 pounds for 10 repetitions and you do this for 3 sets, that gives you a volume load of 3,000 pounds. Another way to gauge volume is by counting the number of reps that you complete in a workout session. And that does help you to understand how much work that you're doing in your muscles overall. Now, additionally, you can measure volume by counting the total number of sets that you perform across different exercises and muscle groups. Number 3, research has actually shown that the number of sets that you do in strength training has direct impact on muscle growth, hypertrophy, regardless of factors like weight or reps. This does mean that increasing the number of sets you do can be a key strategy for building stronger, larger muscles, and this finding does emphasize the importance of planning your workouts carefully to include enough sets to stimulate muscle growth effectively over time. But what's interesting about volume load is that you could actually use a significant heavier load, 120 pounds. You could do less repetitions, almost half, or it is half, and you could do more sets, and that equals to 3,000 pounds. But again, this would be working within a strength phase. This would be more hypertrophic. But overall, the total amount of volume load that you've hit is exactly the same. We then have dosage of volume. Now, the relationship between training volume and muscle growth is significant but nuanced. Research suggests that increasing training volume can lead to greater muscle growth up to a certain point. However, beyond this threshold, additional volume might not necessarily translate to further gains. That's why we call it junk volume, or we're doing too many sets as represented on this graph. And that can actually further impede progress due to excessive fatigue and strain on the body. Now, it's really essential to recognize that more volume isn't always better. Goldilocks on the 3 bears, we need it just right. High volumes of training can be highly fatiguing and can outpace your body's ability to recover adequately. Again, this does underscore the importance of training within your recovery capacity, meaning that your workouts should be challenging but manageable enough to allow for sufficient recovery between sessions. And furthermore, not all sets are equally effective in promoting muscle growth. The quality of each set, including factors like exercise selection, intensity, technique, that all plays a crucial role in determining the impact of training volume on muscle development. Therefore, we need to focus on optimizing the quality of your sets rather than simply increasing volume, the quantity, which can lead to more efficient and sustainable progress in strength training. All sets are not equal. When we look at resistance training, the concept of stimulating reps highlights the importance of focusing on quality over quantity, making sure that the quality of each repetition to maximize muscle stimulation is 100%, while minimizing unnecessary fatigue. Now, exercise selection and execution does play a crucial role in creating the right stimulus for muscle growth. For example, if we compare one set of quad extensions versus one set of squats, squats generally involve multiple muscle groups and are more demanding, providing a greater overall stimulus. The way exercises are performed also differ between beginners and advanced lifters, with experienced lifters often emphasizing proper technique and muscle connection to optimize stimulus for growth. And when we understand absolute and relative effort is going to be key in determining effectiveness of each set, we can then perform a set to failure, reaching the point where you can't complete another repetition, and that's going to represent the maximum absolute effort but can lead to excessive fatigue. On the other hand, we can actually stop a set a few reps shy from failure, and that's still going to provide effective stimulus whilst reducing overall fatigue. We could even adjust the intensity based on the percentage of your 1 rep max, and that's also going to play a crucial role, with different strength levels actually influencing the optimal load to stimulate muscle growth. We can also look at frequency. So the frequency of your training sessions will impact your fatigue accumulation and recovery. Too frequent or intense workouts can lead to, excessive fatigue, hindering your progress. We need to balance frequency with adequate rest, because that's going to be essential to optimize muscle stimulation and adaptation over time. And I guess when we focus on the quality of each repetition rather than the quantity, so many people I see rush their sets. We can select appropriate exercises, we can manage your effort levels, and we can balance training frequency, which are all going to be key strategies for maximizing the effectiveness of strength training while minimizing the risk of overtraining and fatigue. So now we need to look at the differences between hypertrophy and strength. And when we actually consider muscle mass and its development through training, there are several key physiological adaptations that do come into play. But first, we need to actually understand what muscle mass is. Muscle mass is simply building larger muscles, and that does involve an increase in myofibrillar protein content, which enhances your muscle's ability to produce more force. Now, alongside muscle fiber growth, there's also an increase in connective tissue and passive tissue elements, and that does contribute towards your overall muscle size and function. We then have neuromuscular adaptations, so training will induce improvements in neural drive, essentially how your neurons fire and stimulate a muscle, and that's going to enhance the ability to recruit muscle fibers effectively. Now, this does include increased muscle fiber recruitment and rate coding, meaning muscles can contract more rapidly and powerfully. Remember, we talked about those text messages, and those little workers are mechanoreceptors. They can send those text messages intracellularly and send those signals around the muscle cell more rapidly and powerfully. Now, additionally, motor unit synchronization will improve, leading to more coordinated muscle contractions. And then finally, looking at skill acquisition. Strength gains are specific to movement practice. The saying is practice makes perfect, right? So if you're continually changing exercises every single week or every single resistance training session, you're not going to get the results that you want. To excel in lifting heavy weights, it is really crucial to train with heavy loads. Strength adaptation is specific to types of loading experienced whilst training, while hypertrophy, on the other hand, that occurs through various loads, so using a heavy load, a moderate load, and a light load. And that's going to help to increase your strength, but it doesn't always directly correlate with an increase in muscle size. So that's why we say like the hypertrophy rep range should be between 8 to 25 plus. But again, as new evidence emerges, it could be even the lower repetition sets that are more stimulating due to using a heavier load. But that's why we should work across all different rep ranges, 6 to 30 reps. When we understand these principles, that's going to be essential for structuring our training programs and help us with our specific goals, whether it's maximizing muscle strength or improving functional performance in specific movements. And when we actually look at our training programs, they should be tailored to your individual objectives, incorporating appropriate exercises, loads, and frequencies to optimize the desired adaptations and minimize the risk of overall training or injury. Reps in reserve, what are they? Well, they refer to the number of repetitions remaining before reaching muscular failure during a set. For instance, performing a set with 0 RIR, also abbreviated to reps in reserve, means reaching failure, the inability to complete another repetition, while 1 RIR, 1 rep in reserve, indicates you're stopping 1 rep before failure, and then 2 RIR means you're stopping 2 reps before failure. Now, research generally suggests that training with less than 3 RIR is optimal for stimulating muscle growth. Some papers do argue that working within the 0 to 2 RIR range yields similar growth benefits with less fatigue, although substantial evidence supporting this claim at higher RIR levels is actually lacking. When we consider RIR within resistance training, it has several benefits. It helps to manage fatigue by avoiding complete exhaustion in each set, making workouts mentally less demanding, and enabling sustained performance over multiple sets. Now, additionally, it can be safer, especially for complex technical lifts where form is going to be critical. However, there are drawbacks to rely solely on reps in reserve. Many individuals do struggle to accurately estimate their reps in reserve, and that does lead to the potential of underdosing of training stimulus or undertraining. Moreover, using higher RIR values, they may require more sets to achieve sufficient volume, potentially increasing gym time and making performance levels less predictable. Ultimately, if you were to incorporate reps in reserve, RIR, into training protocols, it can be effective for managing fatigue and optimizing performance, but it is really essential to prepare this approach with careful monitoring and adjustment based on your individual response to training stimuli. Effectively using RIR requires a considerable amount of skill in self-assessment and awareness to ensure adequate stimulus for growth without excessive fatigue or risk of injury. We then have load plus effort. Now, assuming the last 5 repetitions of a set are the stimulating reps for growth, the number of sets and repetitions performed can significantly impact your training performance and also the number of reps achieved. For instance, if we complete 4 sets of 10 repetitions with a reps in reserve at 3, guideline results in 40 total reps, of which 8 reps deemed stimulating for growth. However, comparing this to bullet point number 2, where we execute 3 sets of 10 repetitions with a 2 RIR, but you've done 30 reps with 9 reps being stimulating. So which one gives us more hypertrophy? Well, completing 2 sets of the 10 reps to failure, resulting in 20 reps, all of which are stimulating. Meanwhile, conducting 2 sets of 4 reps to failure produces 8 reps, which are stimulating. And then lastly, performing 2 sets of 30 reps to failure, which is a total of 60 reps, 10 reps considered stimulating. It's all very complicated, but the method of conducting sets and reps coupled with RIR guidelines significantly impact the number of stimulating reps for muscle growth attained during a workout. So it really comes down to whether you want to do a top set or a back off, or if you choose low volume, 2 sets, 4 reps, or high volume or moderate volume. It all comes down to what are the stimulating reps for muscle growth. And we can actually see that each rep closer to failure creates high motor unit recruitment, peak tensions, and duration of tendons, so each rep is more effective. So essentially, we lift the dumbbell, it then creates more stimulating reps. This is our muscle fiber, and we can recruit more motor units and ultimately grow more muscle. Training intensity. Now, absolute effort refers to the percentage of volume allocated to specific rep ranges to your individual 1 rep max. And a common allocation is 75% of the volume in the 6 to the 15 rep range, with the remaining 25% distributed among the 1 to 6 rep range and or the 15 to 25 rep range. Now, rep ranges should be chosen when they are aligned with your goals and also your risk tolerance, with heavier loads in the lower rep range conducive to strength and power, and then lighter loads in the higher rep range supportive of endurance and hypertrophy. We then have relative effort. So that's more individualized, especially for beginners. For these individuals, the emphasis should be placed on developing proper technique and form to avoid injury and lay a solid foundation for future progress. A good rule of thumb is to work within a range of 3 to 1 reps in reserve for major compound lifts and 2 to 0 reps in reserve for isolation lifts, because they are typically safer. Now, only after achieving mastery of technique should you consider incorporating all-out sets, so a top set and a back off, as improper form under maximum effort can actually increase the risk of injury. So this approach actually balances the need for appropriate intensity with the importance of mastering fundamental movement patterns. So you need to decide whether you're a beginner, intermediate, or advanced, and what RIR you're going to be working in depending on your goals as well. Volume recommendations. Now, the primary objective in resistance training is to provide an optimal stimulus for muscle growth while allowing for sufficient recovery. This balance is dynamic and depends on your phase of training and also your level of experience. Now, beginners and novices, for instance, typically require less volume to stimulate adaptation. A recommended range is approximately 5 to 10 sets per muscle group per week. And then conversely, intermediates and advanced who have developed higher work capacity and are generally more resilient may benefit from a higher volume approach. For them, the range is between 8 to 20 sets per muscle group per week. That's going to be more suitable, and these general guidelines will provide the framework, but an individual's response to training may vary. So that does necessitate a personalized approach to programming for optimal progress. So you might actually start at the lower end at the start of your resistance training program. And then as you start to get stronger, as you start to get progress, you may even increase the volume through increasing number of total sets performed. Training frequency. Frequency is a critical aspect of training. It's going to determine how volume and intensity are distributed across different workouts. When all the volume is crammed into a single training sessions, the result can actually be less effective than spreading it across multiple sessions per week. And if the goal is to maximize the stimulus each set provides, that's not going to be possible when you're doing all the work in a single session. So when we distribute the work over several sessions, you actually allow for better recovery between your sets, ultimately higher quality of volume. And this approach helps to ensure that it provides more of an effective stimulus, leading to better results over time. So if we actually take a look at a beginner, a balanced workout for those that are training 3 days per week would look at an approach of alternating full body workouts with rest days, which are going to be proven to be effective. Now, each session typically comprises of 2 to 3 sets, targeting major muscle groups, ensuring comprehensive engagement without the body being overtaxed. And this pattern of intensity and recovery fosters muscle growth and strength development. Meanwhile, if you prefer more frequent training schedule, you may opt for a 4-day per week training routine, which features a blend of full body and split workouts. This format optimizes muscle recovery while sustaining momentum throughout the week, and it alternates between upper and lower body, focused on designated days, and ensures comprehensive muscle development and also rest between sessions, promoting strength gains, overall fitness progression, and recovery. But again, it doesn't matter what split that you follow. What matters is consistency and balance, which are going to be successful for your training program, irrespective of frequency. And being fully transparent, I have run a upper-lower split for almost 10 years now, probably more. So if you're just starting out, full body, 3 days per week is definitely what I'd recommend. Then as you start to progress, upper-lower with a few rotations in there, A, B, and C may be your best shout. Intermediate lifters. For those looking at more of a targeted approach, a 4-day per week regime provides that structured framework, focusing on specific muscle groups. You'll alternate between upper and lower body workouts, and each session is going to emphasize a different set of muscles, allowing for adequate recovery and maximizing gains. So again, we can see for upper, probably 3 to 5 sets per muscle group, then lower, 3 to 5 sets per muscle group, and again, you rest and then go back into upper, go back into lower, maybe have a strength day and a hypertrophy day. The workout typically consists of 3 to 5 sets, but we need to make sure intensity and variation is there to challenge the body effectively. Meanwhile, if you're looking at increasing frequency to 5 days per week, you may follow a pull, push legs off upper, lower split and then repeat. That setup will divide your workouts into distinct categories: the pulling muscles, the pushing muscles, and also your lower body muscles on separate days, with a strategic rest individual to make sure that you're recovering throughout the week, and it optimizes muscle growth. And then advanced lifters, again, it all depends on the type of individual that you are and exactly what your goals are as well. For a dynamic workout routine, varying in intensity and focus, you could do the 3 on 1 off approach, where you are training 3 days per week consecutive, and then you have 1 day to recover. Each session compromises of around 4 to 8 sets per muscle group for that session, and then this structured format is going to ensure balanced development and prevent overtraining as well. Meanwhile, you do have 2 on, 1 off, where you alternate between push and pull exercises with a dedicated leg day for lower body development, and this rotation allows for targeted training on specific muscle groups while providing sufficient rest to optimize performance. Alternatively, you could do a 5-day rotation, which does simplify your schedule a little bit, where you alternate between push and pull workouts with a day of rest for recovery. Then you go into legs, off, and then repeat. This streamlined approach is going to help you to maintain consistency while ensuring adequate rest between sessions to facilitate muscle growth and muscle repair. But again, going back to what I've said previously, if you follow a 3-day, a 4-day, a 5-day rotation, the key is within consistency and effort within those resistance training sessions. More is not necessarily better. So if we actually look at specialized cycles as well, depending on your physique goals and also your individual goals, perhaps you want to bring up your back. So you start off the week with push, 4 to 6 sets, and then you move on to pull. We can actually see the total number of sets there has significantly increased from 4 to 6 to 4 to 8. And then you have the day off. So 2 on, 1 off, and then 2 on, 1 off. Pull, again, that's within that 4 to 8 set range. If you want to focus on your legs, perhaps you start with legs or pull, focusing on posterior chain, back and hamstrings. You then focus on push, because you're not going to do a pulling movement after you've just done legs. And then you have it off, and then legs, it'll be quads, pull, off, repeat. If you want to focus on push, again, you'd start off with a resistance training session of pull to begin the week, then push for chest, then you have it off, then legs, then push delts and triceps off. And it just allows these muscle groups to grow and catch up with other more dominant muscle groups that you've been training for a considerable amount of time. And then finally, if we're looking at an arm focus day, perhaps you run push pull. You've already got big legs, so you put arms in there and then you train legs once a week. Off, repeat. So pretty much every 4 days you're going to be training those legs. So off and then repeat. So imagine push, pull, arms, legs. So essentially every 8th day you're going to be training legs, but every 3rd day you're going to be training arms.